My parents screamed, "You're dead to us," and slammed a cake in my face at a family gathering, all because I refused to hand over my apartment to my spoiled sister. But what I did next left them begging for mercy. Aurora. The name echoed in my mind as I stood in the middle of the new apartment, devoid of any furniture with only stark white walls and cold wooden floors. I did it. After 10 years of grinding from dawn till dusk, I finally had a place to call my own. A 2-bedroom apartment, spacious, less than a 15-minute drive from my office. I'm 32, single, and proud. Proud because I bought this place with my own hard-earned money. It all started the day I stepped into my first accounting firm. The starting salary was barely enough, but I stayed patient, saving every penny. My friends traveled everywhere, posting photos on social media from the beaches of the Bahamas to the peaks of Colorado. And me? I stayed home with instant noodles, a laptop, and a stack of bills. No one understood why I lived so frugally. "Aurora, do you really have to save that much?" Lauren, my best friend, asked when I declined her invitation to a concert she'd bought tickets 4 months earlier. "One day, I'll have a place of my own," I replied. Lauren just sighed while I returned to my shabby rented room, staring at the cardboard boxes filled with books and belongings I'd accumulated over the years. The final push came from my grandmother. She passed away 3 months ago, leaving me a sum that wasn't large, but was just enough to make my dream come true. "Didn't she leave anything for my parents?" I asked her lawyer, still unable to believe it. "She said you'd need it more than them," he replied, his gaze sharp. "She said you're the only one in the family who truly knows how to turn dreams into reality." And she was right. With that inheritance and nearly a decade of savings, I bought this apartment. A place worth $250,000, spacious with a balcony overlooking a small park. Not luxurious, but enough to make me feel like I was finally living the life I had envisioned. The day I received the keys, I stood in the empty living room looking around. The pale yellow walls from the previous owner were peeling. The floors were dusty and footprints were embedded in the wood, but I didn't see anything ugly. I only saw potential. Potential to turn this place into a real home. I spent the next week cleaning every corner, scrubbing, peeling off outdated floral wallpaper, and repainting. At night, I sat on the floor, paint roller in hand, sipping coffee and watching DIY home renovation videos on YouTube. Exhausted, but I'd never felt more alive until that call came. "It's Mom." Her voice echoed through the phone. "Are you free this Saturday? Come home. The whole family is having a little get-together." "What's it about, Mom?" I asked, still covered in white paint. "A surprise." "Just be there," she said. Her tone was sweet, but I could still sense that unsettling chill beneath it. I hung up, staring at the half-painted wall. My hand gripped the paint roller so tightly that my knuckles turned white. What was waiting for me this Saturday? Morning light seeped through the large windows, casting soft rays across the hardwood floor still speckled with dust and paint. I leaned against the freshly painted wall, the coffee in my hand long cold. In front of me was the empty, spacious living room, the product of 10 years of relentless work, my first apartment, where every penny saved was a drop of sweat and a sleepless night. 10 years ago, fresh out of college, I decided not to follow in the footsteps of my peers, those who rushed to climb the social ladder through flashy jobs and extravagant parties. Instead, I stepped into a small accounting firm on the east side of the city where work never seemed to end. 60 hours a week, no breaks. Mornings spent staring at endless spreadsheets, eyes glued to financial reports. Afternoons spent eating cold sandwiches in the break room, eyes still fixed on client statements. Late nights spent dragging my feet back to my tiny rented room where the single bed barely fit and left no space for anything else. There were moments when I asked myself, "Aurora, what are you doing? What are you sacrificing your youth for?" But then, I'd remind myself that this wasn't a pointless sacrifice. It was the first step toward building a life where I wouldn't rely on anyone. Everyone around me thought I was wasting my youth. Lauren, my best friend, tried to drag me out to bars on Friday nights. "Aurora, you have to live a little. You've worked all week. Come out and unwind," she urged, holding a cocktail that shimmered with bright red liquid. I just shook my head, glancing at the time. "I still have to finish a report for a client. If I don't, my boss will lose it tomorrow morning." Lauren sighed, but said nothing more. Though she didn't say it, I could see the disappointment in her eyes every time I declined her invitations to parties, outings, or trips. Those years, I had no time for fun. No money for the designer bags or fancy shoes that Lauren and the others flaunted on social media. All I had was a savings account thick with numbers, the result of sleepless nights hunched over my desk, subsisting on instant noodles and instant coffee. Then one day, while sitting in the office, my boss, Mr. Harvey, unexpectedly walked in. "Aurora, I have a new opportunity for you. A big project that needs a full-time lead. If you do well, there will be a substantial bonus." The word substantial bonus made me sit up straight. What project, sir? A major client, Blackwell & Company. They need someone to audit their books for the past 3 years. It's tough, but if you succeed, I'll consider a raise and a bonus. I nodded without hesitation. Even though I knew saying yes meant giving up the next 3 months to endless work, I didn't care. I was already used to sleepless nights, and I was willing to push through for that bonus. 3 months later, when the project wrapped up, I received a check for $50,000. Holding that check, I cried. It was the first time in my life that I felt like I had truly accomplished something significant. That money, combined with my grandmother's inheritance, became the key that opened the door to this apartment, the place where I now sat in silence, reflecting on every drop of sweat spilled over the years. People could call me cold, selfish, or crazy for giving up so many chances to enjoy life, but they didn't understand. They'd never lived in a cramped room where every sound from the neighbors echoed through the walls. They'd never eaten instant noodles 3 times a day because there wasn't enough money for a decent meal. Now I had this apartment where every brick, every coat of paint was a testament to my perseverance and determination. It wasn't just a home. It was a monument to my resilience, and I wasn't going to let anyone take it away from me. The phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. It was Lauren. I picked up. Aurora, are you ready for the family gathering? Your mom just texted me saying you have to bring the K. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. Right. Almost forgot. I'm on my way. But my heart felt heavy as I thought about what awaited me at the old house. Because I knew that once I stepped through that door, everything would be different. I parked in front of the old house. The place that was once my home but was now just a heavy block of memories. The 2-story house with its faded white paint, the worn-out wooden fence, and the swing where I used to sit for hours reading books. I stepped out, clutching the cake box tightly, trying to steady my breath. The door swung open before I even knocked. It was Natalie. My sister. She stood there, her curly hair perfectly styled, her face glowing like a queen who had just stepped out of a fairy tale. Natalie was 3 years younger than me, but she had always been treated like a princess by our parents. Even when she dropped out of school to find herself, our parents opened their wallets for her extravagant vacations that she flaunted all over social media. Aurora, you finally made it. Natalie squealed, her eyes lighting up as she spotted the cake box. Is that the chocolate cake from Mom's favorite bakery? Yes, I replied shortly, stepping inside. The scent of Natalie's expensive perfume lingered throughout the living room. In the corner, Mom was chatting with a few relatives. When she saw me, she offered a cordial smile, the kind I was all too familiar with. You're here, Aurora. Put the cake on the table. Natalie, help your sister, Mom said, her tone still gentle, but devoid of any warmth. Natalie quickly grabbed the cake box and carried it into the kitchen, where I saw Dad talking to Uncle Ed, his closest brother. I walked over, nodded, but Dad only gave me a brief glance before turning back to his conversation. I felt like a ghost in my own family. I walked into the kitchen where Natalie was cutting the cake, and Mom and Dad sat around the table laughing and chatting. Natalie saw me holding the knife and tilted her head with a look of feigned innocence. Aurora, I know you've been busy with your new apartment, she said, her tone sweet, but I just wanted to say how proud I am of you. You finally managed to buy a home without taking out a loan. Everyone around us laughed as if she'd just cracked a joke. That's right, Aurora. You're really something, Mom said, emphasizing the word something as if it were an oddity. I bit my lip, forcing myself not to let out a sigh. But, Natalie continued, turning to Mom, Kyle and I have some good news. We've decided to move in together, and we're looking for a new apartment. It's just that financially, we're a bit strapped, she said, glancing at me with a deliberate look. Mom immediately set her glass down, leaning toward me. Aurora, did you hear that? Natalie and Kyle are looking for a new place, and you just bought a spacious apartment, didn't you? My heart clenched. I knew what was coming. It was what I'd sensed from the moment Mom called to invite me to this family gathering. The air in the kitchen felt like it was about to explode. Natalie still sat there, her hands resting on her stomach, eyes glistening with tears as if she were the most pitiful victim in the world. Mom stood behind her, hands gripping Natalie's shoulders as if protecting a helpless child. And in this case, the villain they were defending her against was me. Mom looked at me, her hand gently stroking Natalie's shoulder as if she were a child in need of protection. Aurora, could you let your sister and Kyle stay at your apartment for a while? They're both struggling. You're living alone after all. You don't need that much space. I swallowed hard. Mom's words echoed in my mind like a verdict already passed. The apartment I had worked my entire youth to save for, now they wanted me to give it up. For Natalie, who had never once taken responsibility for her own life. Natalie offered a weak smile, her hand resting on her stomach, her eyes teary but still glimmering with smug satisfaction. I know you worked so hard for that place, Aurora, but I'm about to be a mother. I'm just asking to stay for a few months. I forced myself to take a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Mom, that apartment is mine. I worked non-stop for 10 years to get it. I won't give it up just because Natalie refuses to stand on her own feet. Natalie burst into tears. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing as if her heart had just been shattered. Mom immediately rushed to her side, hugging her tight, rubbing her back as though Natalie had just endured unimaginable suffering. I told you, Natalie, Mom said, her voice trembling. Your sister only thinks about herself. Don't expect anything from her. If I'm as selfish as everyone says, I said coldly, then what does that make Natalie? She's never tried to stand on her own. Every time things get tough, she just cries and demands. You think I'm going to give up everything I've worked for just because she refuses to try? You're being cruel, Aurora, Dad shouted, slamming his fist on the table. Natalie is about to have a baby. She needs help. How can you be so heartless? Heartless? I let out a bitter laugh that echoed through the room. Do you have any idea how hard I had to work for that apartment? No days off, no moments to relax, all you do is call me selfish? And what about Natalie? What has she ever done besides sit there and demand? Natalie jumped up from her seat, her eyes red, her lips trembling. I'm only asking for a few months, Aurora. I'm about to be a mother. Why can't you think of me just this once? A few months? I narrowed my eyes. Or a few years? Or forever? Natalie, have you ever done anything to deserve being helped? Do you even know what it means to be independent? Mom released Natalie, her eyes blazing with anger. She marched straight toward me, her face tight, her hands gripping the cake I had brought. Aurora, you've changed, she said through gritted teeth. You're not the daughter I was once proud of. Now you only care about yourself. You're selfish. You're cruel. Before I could say another word, Mom raised her hand. Splat. The room went dead silent. The cake hit my face, cream and chocolate smearing down from my forehead to my neck, ice cold. My eyes shut tight, humiliation seeping through every pore. Everyone stared. Not a single person moving. No one stepped in to stop it. Natalie cradled her stomach, looking down, but I caught the slight curve of her lips, a fleeting, victorious smile. Mom stood there, her breath heavy, her hands still covered in cake and frosting. You're no longer my daughter, she whispered, her voice shaking but firm. And don't you ever come back. I bit down hard on my lip, breathing heavily, eyes clenched tight to hold back the tears that threatened to spill. Without a word, I turned and walked away. Each step felt heavier than the last. I sat alone in my empty apartment, the living room lights still not installed, only the dim glow of a single desk lamp casting shadows across the walls. The room was so silent, I could hear the pounding of my own heart. My shirt was still stained with cream and chocolate from the cake Mom had thrown in my face. The sickly sweet smell clung to my skin, a sticky reminder of the humiliation I'd just endured. I took a deep breath, my hand trembling as I picked up my phone. The screen displayed a barrage of messages from Mom, Dad, and even Natalie, but I didn't open a single one. Instead, I opened the search app and typed top real estate lawyer in the city. The results appeared instantly. One name caught my eye. Evan Ross, real estate attorney specializing in family disputes, over 15 years of experience. I clicked on the number and pressed call. This is Evan Ross. A deep, steady voice answered. I need legal advice regarding property ownership, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. It's about the house my parents are living in, the house that was left to me and my sister. Do you have documentation proving ownership? Evan asked. Yes, I have my grandmother's will, clearly stating the house is to be split between me and Natalie. But since her death, my parents have taken over the entire property and haven't paid me a single cent. Evan paused for a moment as if taking notes. So what do you want to do? Do you want to demand that your parents pay rent, or are you asking to sell your share? I want my share back, I said firmly, my gaze fixed on the blank wall in front of me. I'm done being treated like I'm invisible. They've taken everything from me. Love, respect, but I won't let them take what's legally mine. I understand, Evan said, his tone lowering. We'll start by sending a notice demanding they either pay rent or buy out your share. If they refuse, we'll proceed with a lawsuit and request the house be sold to split the proceeds. Do it, I said, my voice unwavering. I'm ready. 2 days later, an official letter was delivered to my parents' house, the house they'd been living in as if it were theirs. That evening as I returned home from work, my phone rang. It was Lauren, the only friend I had left. Aurora, have you seen Facebook? Lauren's voice was frantic. Your mom just posted something. You need to check it right now. I opened the app, my heart pounding against my chest. My mom's post was at the top of the page, shared, and commented on more than any of her previous posts. It breaks my heart to say this, but sometimes your own family can be the coldest, most selfish people. My daughter, Aurora, has decided to kick her own parents out of the home we've lived in for 30 years, all because of money. She wants to sell the house, leaving Natalie, her pregnant sister, and her husband homeless. Below that were hundreds of angry comments. Oh my God. Aurora is a monster. For everything her parents did for her, she's kicking them out? Poor Natalie. How will she survive with a baby on the way and nowhere to go? I gripped the phone tightly, every word cutting into me like a knife. Mom had turned me into the villain in everyone's eyes, while the truth was the exact opposite. The phone buzzed again. A message from Natalie. Are you happy now? You've turned this entire family against you over that stupid apartment. If anything happens to my baby because of this stress, it's on you. I threw the phone onto the couch, hot tears streaming down my face. I had expected them to do everything possible to make me back down, but I never imagined they'd be this ruthless, smearing their own daughter's name just to get a house they had no right to. I wiped my tears away, taking a deep breath. I couldn't break down. Not now. I picked up the phone and called Evan. Can you send the demand for the house sale right now? I can, Evan replied, his voice disturbingly calm. But are you sure? Once this notice is sent, there's no going back. I don't need to go back, I said, my tone firmer than ever. I just need to take back what's mine. Hanging up, I walked to the window and looked down at the empty street below. Outside, the sky was pitch black, and the yellow streetlights cast weak, flickering shadows across the sidewalk. As I had changed, I was no longer the weak Aurora who always backed down and let herself be trampled on. The day of the mediation arrived. I stood outside Evan Ross's office building, taking a deep breath to steady myself. The glaring sun bore down on me, but I felt no warmth. Today, I was going to face the entire family, the people who branded me as a traitor just because I dared to stand up for my rights. Evan was already waiting in the conference room. He sat with one leg crossed over the other, holding a thick stack of documents. When he saw me enter, he gave me a slight smile. Ready, Aurora? I don't have a choice, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Evan nodded, his eyes cold and sharp. Remember, this is the last chance for your family to negotiate. If they don't agree, we'll take this to court. Are you sure you won't change your mind? I'm sure, I said firmly. The conference room door swung open. Dad, Mom, and Natalie walked in, followed by Kyle, the man I always saw as a freeloading parasite. Natalie wore a light blue maternity dress, her hands resting protectively over her belly like she was cradling a precious treasure. Her eyes were red and puffy, her lips trembling as if she'd been crying all night. Mom walked past me without even a glance. She sat down, placed her purse on the table, and folded her arms. Dad took the seat next to her, his fists clenched, eyes glaring at me like I'd just committed a heinous crime. Let's begin, Evan said, his voice calm but commanding. Today, we're here to discuss the ownership of the house left to both Aurora and Natalie by their grandmother. According to the will, the house is to be divided equally, half to each of them. Aurora is requesting to sell her share and split the proceeds. Split? Mom scoffed, letting out a bitter laugh. So my daughter wants to kick her family out on the street just to get some money? The daughter I raised for 30 years is really doing this to her own parents? I'm not kicking anyone out, I said, keeping my voice level. Mom, Dad, and Natalie can stay in the house as long as they pay me the amount equivalent to my half, or they can agree to sell the house and split the money according to Grandma's will. Natalie let out a strangled sob, tears spilling down her face. You want to take money from a pregnant woman? You're really that heartless, Aurora. Kyle placed a hand on Natalie's shoulder, his voice rising. Aurora, Natalie is pregnant. She needs a stable home to have this baby. She can't be out on the streets just because you want money. Out on the streets? I raised an eyebrow. You two can find somewhere else to live or buy my share of the house. It's my property, and I have every right to decide what to do with it. Dad slammed his fist on the table, eyes blazing. Aurora, do you really have no sense of family? We've raised you, fed you, educated you, and now you want to take money from your own parents? I let out a cold laugh. Raised me? You raised me because you had to. Meanwhile, Natalie got everything, from cars to luxury vacations. And me? I had to work part-time jobs from 16 just to buy my own textbooks. Do you remember that? Mom turned her face away, saying nothing. Evan, I said, turning to my lawyer, tell them the amount I'm asking for. Evan nodded, opening the file. Based on the latest appraisal, the house is currently valued at $340,000. Aurora's half share amounts to $170,000. If they can't pay this amount, we will proceed to request a court-ordered sale of the property and split the proceeds evenly. Mom took a deep breath, her eyes burning with hatred. Daughter, I sacrificed so many years raising you. And now, over $170,000, you're throwing your own mother and sister out? I'm not throwing anyone out, I said, my voice as cold as ice. You can stay. Just pay me what's legally mine. That's fair. Natalie's sobs grew louder, her hands gripping Kyle's arm tightly. Kyle, I can't believe this. Is this the sister I once loved? Kyle turned to me, his words slow and deliberate. Aurora, I just hope that when you have children of your own, you won't regret treating Natalie like this. I didn't respond. I just locked eyes with Kyle. Is that a threat? Kyle smirked, but said nothing more. Evan closed the file and stood up. Our demands are clear. If you don't agree, we will take this case to court. My parents remained silent, but their eyes said it all. Those weren't the eyes of loved ones anymore. They were the eyes of enemies. People willing to do whatever it took to take something they didn't deserve. Natalie finally stood up, her eyes glistening with tears. Aurora, I hope you enjoy that money. But remember, you just threw your parents and sister out on the street for a few extra dollars. I didn't respond. Just met her gaze. I didn't throw anyone out. You all put yourselves in this situation when you treated me like a bottomless wallet. This time, I won't back down. As they walked out of the room, I saw Natalie still sobbing, clinging to Kyle as if she were the most pitiful victim in the world. The door closed, and silence filled the room again. Evan looked at me, his expression thoughtful. Are you okay? I don't know, I said, my voice catching, but I know I did the right thing. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was truly standing up for myself, even if the cost was losing my entire family. 2 months after the mediation, I stood in the middle of my living room holding a paint roller, silently watching the fresh white paint stretch across the walls. The room was now brighter, more spacious, with no trace of the old dingy yellow walls I used to hate. In the kitchen, I had replaced all the old cabinets with new, glossy oak ones. A small dark gray dining table sat by the window, where each morning, I could sit with my coffee and watch the morning sunlight filter through the green leaves outside. This was my space. No one had the right to take it away. When I received the $175,000 from the sale of my share of the house, I didn't feel the happiness I had expected. The money sat neatly in my bank account, but my heart felt empty and cold. Natalie and Kyle had bought a small house in the suburbs. My parents had moved in with them. I heard that the house was much smaller than the old one. No spacious yard, no large living room for family gatherings, but that was their choice, a choice they forced me to make. I no longer had any contact with them. The threatening texts and accusatory calls had stopped since the day I blocked all their numbers. Both Facebook and Instagram, I deleted my old accounts and started fresh with a limited friend list. Only those who truly cared about me, not those who only saw me as a source of money. One late night, as I sat on my old couch, the only piece of furniture left from my previous rental, my phone suddenly buzzed. It was Lauren. Aurora? Are you okay? Her voice was filled with concern and sincerity. I'm fine, I said, staring up at the ceiling fan, its blades spinning in a slow, steady rhythm. Are you sure? I heard Natalie just had the baby. Your mom posted pictures on social media saying the baby doesn't have an aunt because her aunt abandoned her family. My heart clenched. I closed my eyes, trying to stay calm. Yeah, I figured they'd say something like that. Lauren was silent for a moment before she spoke again. Aurora, you did nothing wrong. You did everything you could. They don't deserve your sacrifice. I know, I said, but my voice cracked. But why does it still hurt so much, Lauren? How could they treat me like this? Because they never saw you as family, Lauren said, her voice heavy with sympathy. Real family isn't about blood. It's about people who truly love and respect you. And Aurora, they never did. After hanging up, I sat alone in the dark, letting the tears fall freely. I had lost my family by blood, but I still had myself. A few weeks later, I decided to completely revamp the apartment. I used a portion of the money from the house sale to buy new furniture, a bed, a desk, and a soft gray rug. I painted the walls myself, installed a new chandelier, and transformed the apartment into a place where the painful memories no longer lingered. Every morning, I woke up early, brewed a hot cup of coffee, and sat by the window to read, something I never had time to do before. I signed up for a weekend yoga class and started attending workshops on real estate investment, a field I was beginning to consider pursuing. I also started keeping a journal, writing down every emotion, every thought. Some pages were soaked with tears, while others were filled with messy, disjointed scribbles. But with every page, I realized one important thing. I didn't need anyone else to validate my worth. I was free, I was independent, and I could rebuild my life without seeking approval from my so-called family. One afternoon, as I arranged flowers in a new glass vase, the doorbell rang. I walked over and peered through the peephole. It was Lauren. She stepped inside, her eyes shining. Aurora, do you know what I just heard? What? I asked, placing the vase down on the table. Your parents are at risk of losing their house, Lauren said, her eyes filled with confusion. Kyle can't keep up with the mortgage payments, and Natalie just had a baby, so she's not working. The house they just bought is being foreclosed by the bank. My heart sank. I didn't know how to feel. Relieved that they were finally facing the consequences of their actions, or saddened because, after all, they were still my family? Lauren looked at me, placing a hand on my shoulder. Aurora, you don't have to do anything. This isn't your fault. This was their choice. I nodded, my eyes still fixed on the vase of flowers. Lauren stood up and walked to the door. Aurora, you did so well. You stood up for yourself. That's something to be proud of. As the door closed, I sat down on the couch, staring at the vase in front of me. A slight smile spread across my lips. I had lost my blood relatives, but I had finally found myself. Aurora's story is a powerful reminder that family isn't always defined by those who genuinely love and respect you. Sometimes the people closest to us are the first to manipulate and take advantage of us for their own gain. Aurora had to fight to reclaim what was rightfully hers, accepting the loss of her blood family in exchange for freedom and self-respect.